On September 20th, 2019, Switch owners were hit with the most difficult choice. Do you buy Link's Awakening, a remake of one of the best games on the Game Boy, or Untitled Goose Game, a quirky stealth title where you play as a hated cobra chicken? After an intense deliberation that took a total of 2 long minutes, I decided there was only one real choice. It's time to get off that couch and crack those fingers as we all at Gardner's and this episode of Gonzo Media. Untitled Goose Game was developed by the 4-man teamed Melbourne, Australia-based House and was published by Panic Inc. Both of these companies only have one other game in their roster, with Panic Inc. publishing the interesting story-driven Firewatch back in 2016. House had previously developed Push Me Pull You also back in 2016. I never played Push Me Pull You because, well, help us. Yeah, truly the greatest body horror. Inspiration for Untitled Goose Game began in 2016 when Push Me Pull You was finishing up in development. They decided they wanted to make a third-person 3D Mario-esque game, but didn't have any other solid ideas outside of that. Until one day a developer named Stuart left a picture of a goose with the caption, "Let's make a game about this." This clear attempt at an inside joke between the dev team led them to discuss what if they made a game where you play as a horrible goose. To be honest, that is pretty realistic. It's not like there's really any other type of goose out there. When they released the first trailer back in 2017, House didn't really expect the game to get the reaction that it received. House had only made the garden area that we seen in the first trailer, and the team was only planning on releasing what little they had as a small novelty title before they started working on their next big project. The game was instantly well received, much to the surprise of the dev team. In an interview, House developer Strasser was quoted saying, "We thought the goose was a joke. It felt like an in-joke. Then we very quickly realized how many people, particularly in the northern hemisphere, have strong feelings about geese. I want to say it's because it's a largely unnoticed part of people's lives, so drawing attention to it is a very satisfying in the way a joke can be. We didn't think it'd be as resonant as it was. I'm not sure the reasons we find geese funny are the same as the other reasons other people find geese funny." One of the first things I noticed about Untitled Goose Game was just how beautiful everything was. The game is in 3D, but it's designed to have a flat, almost storybook feel to it. All of the environments are made to invoke the sleepy feelings of a small town in the UK, with pleasant green grass and gardens, a little river that meanders throughout the town, and beautiful red brick buildings. Man, that was hard to say. House based the design of the game on children's television that was being aired from the UK when the developers were growing up. The show's postman Pat.
Good morning, Pat.
Morning, Mrs. Goggins.
Oh, Pat. Are you all right? You don't look too good.
Fireman Sam. And Brum were directly cited as inspirations.
What are they up to, Brum?
Since I am a boring American who didn't grow up with quality children's entertainment, I have no idea what any of these are. Though after looking up Brum and seeing the eyes of a soulless man who has seen too much of the world, I know I'm going to have nightmares for the rest of my life. Thomas the Dank Engine,
I got 7 Mac-11s, about 8.
a show I do know, was also used as inspiration for the enthusiastic, yet faceless, villagers.
And now a word from our sponsors.
We will now return to your feature presentation. The graphics are lovely and the concept is novel, but the real question is the game fun to play? Sure, the concept of playing as a goose is interesting, but if it's not an enjoyable experience, then that concept is wasted. Thankfully, House put a lot of effort into the gameplay, to the point where even controlling the goose feels great. It's difficult to explain, but the goose has a really good weight to it. When on water, you feel very graceful, and swimming through the lake has a nice speed and pace to it. However, considering how geese have evolved to live a life on the water, you feel very heavy when on land. At least for the Switch version, you can feel every plop of every step as you waddle about looking to cause mischief. You can run, but only in one direction. The story of my life! While you can try to turn while sprinting, it's such a slow turn that you will most likely just run into obstacles instead of swerving around them. The gameplay of Untitled Goose Game is somewhere between a puzzle and a stealth game. I've honestly never really played or seen a game quite like Untitled Goose Game before. The game is an open sandbox that is broken up into smaller levels where you need to perform a list of tasks before you can head on over to the next area. These objectives are tasks like set up a kitchen table, steal a set of keys from the farmer, and totally humiliating a boy and forcing him to buy back a toy from a street merchant. Sucks to suck, kid. Oh, not again. Each area has 6 different tasks, and after completing about 5 of them, you unlock the objective that will allow you to move on to the next area. These final objectives are essentially the boss fights of Goose Game, and have you doing something to a human, like dropping a bucket onto their head, which leads them to create an opening in the environment. If for some reason you can't get past one of the challenges, fret not, for the game allows you to skip one task. Considering how abstract and obtuse some of these challenges are, I think it's a really good inclusion, and I'm glad that House put it into the game. At this point, you must all be thinking, what do the villagers think of my shenanigans? Well, I feel like all of the town's racist anti-goose propaganda points to that they are at least mostly okay with all of them. The townsfolk are the game's only opposition, and their presence is where the stealth elements come in. Some of the townies will chase the goose on sight and force you to drop any items you happen to be carrying. The villagers seem to have no intention of capturing you, so there is no game over sequence. But villagers will force you out of important areas and reset your progress on some of your tasks. Due to them being large bipedal apes, the villagers are also much faster than you are. So unless you have a lead while running, they will be able to stop you. There is some weird collision detection on the humans though, so you can rough it out and keep on charging people until you nab the item they are holding. However, this is not the optimal way to do it, so it's a tactic I really don't recommend you try. If you've seen any of my other game impression videos, you will notice that I have never really talked about music before. That is not in any way a sign to show that I don't like music. In fact, I live in the contrary. I feel music is really important, and is one of the most necessary tools in setting any mood or tone a creator is trying to invoke. I just kind of lack the knowledge of the music words needed to make an interesting dialogue over musical composition. You see all those musical terms floating around the screen? Don't know what any of them are. Especially clang for Ben Melody. I always try to use the music in the video game as the background music for my videos, as an attempt to include them in my content in some capacity. Thankfully, Untitled Goose Game features a type of music that I am fully capable of talking about. Dynamic music is the bomb. That bomb. Right over there. Dynamic music is identified by different names, but the concept is always the same. It is essentially where the music starts off with a simple melody, but evolves based on the actions currently happening in the game. I love the concept so much that I feel like it should be an episode of its own down the line. But let's get back to the Goose Game originally was never intended to have music, but House changed their minds after the creation of their first trailer. Composer Dan Golding was brought on to do the music for the trailer, where he used the modified version of Debussy's Prelude No. 12 Minstrels. The reaction of the modified music was such a hit that House decided to include a similar style of music in the full game. Dan made the song, known as Prelude, and split it into 2 beats. He then used the stems created from the beats to make 3 different states. A silent state, which is played when just walking around, a low energy state that is played when you are manipulating objects, and finally the active state that is played when you are being chased around. This was an extremely impactful way to compose your soundtrack, and it combos really well with the HD rumble built into the Switch's Joy-Cons. Not only can you hear the waddle, you can feel the waddle too! The only real complaint I have for Untitled Goose Game is its length. There are only 5 different areas in the game, and while the challenge of the tasks and number of townies increases as you advance, you can still complete the main game in only a measly 3 to 4 hours. The openness of how the task can be completed also means if you get really lucky or really know what you're doing, you could even complete the game in a fraction of that time. As of this recording, there's already a speed run of 2 minutes and 37 seconds. And while that's someone that's really good at the game, it does help to show just how short of an experience the whole thing really is. Thankfully, once the game is beaten, you are given a whole new set of challenges, some of which require you to utilize people and items from the different areas within the town. These challenges tend to be more difficult as well, and considering how fun it is to problem solve puzzles in this game, are a wonderful inclusion. Some of these tasks are actually time trials, where you have to complete all of the original tasks in an area before the church bell rings. All of this extra content is really enjoyable, and it really helps make the player feel like they are getting their money's worth out of this game. Untitled Goose Game is currently one of my favorite games of 2019, and I highly recommend it to anyone. It's such an oddly fulfilling experience, with its tight controls and funny premise. The game is short enough that you never get bored with it, which tends to be a big problem with a lot of games these days. Not that I'm trying to call anyone out. Regardless if you hate geese or you love them, you should definitely give this game a try. Thank you all so very much for watching my video. I hope you all enjoyed it, and more importantly, I hope you all have a wonderful day.